Felt like people would say my name and then it would be like, it's like I would look behind me and be like, "Who are you talking about?" And that was like,
Mhm.
I remember I can trace that feeling all the way back to my early childhood.
Welcome to the Masking Tapes. I'm your host, Carolina Hidalgo-McCabe. At the Masking Tapes, we're delving into what does 21st century manhood and masculinity look like? And we're talking to everyday people about how it shows up in their lives and what they're doing about the different crises that we're all facing together. This is part 2 of my conversation with June and Madeleine, where we're gonna dive in and continue to explore the relationship between experiencing boyhood and manhood and now living out their true identities as queer, non-binary, and trans feminine. And so I am just so glad you are joining us for the second part of this really, really exciting and meaningful episode. Madeleine, I was wondering, having heard June talk a little bit about what it was like navigating friendships with their straight friends and straight housemates in this process, what was your experience navigating friendships in general during your transition and now too?
I think when I first started transitioning, I lost a lot of boys that I was close with. Um, I lost a lot of friends in general, or I'd make them and be like, "Whoa, you see me weird, you treat me weird." As like trans and queer people, we're like incredibly aware of the very minute movements of the people that like we spend time with. And if they don't like, we can tell how someone sees us. We're very good at that because we're like, I don't know, like, we have to be. I found that, like, there were some people that I had been close with that I was like, "Whoa," like, we can no longer relate, or, like, the way that you interact with me is, like, actually, like, just really uncomfortable. People who had said weird stuff about, like, "Oh, I don't really get the whole they, them pronoun thing," like, um, I just think it's a lot to ask of people around you. Lost that friend. And like, I hear where he was coming from, but I can't be the one to undo that?
I think speaking slightly from the outside here, I remember June in your transition process, there were times where I would misgender or mispronoun. What's it called when you say the wrong pronoun?
Misgender.
Misgender you at times, and I'd be like, "Oh fuck." Like it was a learning and unlearning process, and I think sometimes like what's challenging from the outside is you're not experiencing the level of transition that the person is internally experiencing, and so you're like trying to rewire your brain circuits, and it's one of those things that takes time, but I think there's a difference between like being like, okay, now I want to work on this, like this is something that I might fuck up, and I'm gonna try every day to get better at, versus like this is something that like screw this. What are your thoughts on that?
I
Wow.
love when people respond with curiosity, I think, because I recently kind of came out to like my extended family. I was very nervous. I didn't know how they were going to respond, and I had a lot of preconceived notions about like maybe how older people are going to respond. Um, and I remember being very overwhelmed by the amount of sort of like compassion and sort of curiosity that people expressed to me. They were kind of like, they would be like, "Oh, we didn't expect this, but like we are really interested in sort of like learning about this and kind of getting to know you and sort of you in this sort of new phase of your life." And it it really it really checked my like assumptions that I make about people based like sort of erecting walls, based on like maybe, age, political belief, sort of background, where you live. All this anxiety was in me. It was really um dispelled by that sort of compassion and curiosity that people were expressing. I don't expect somebody to like know my experience or even to know what to call me. Like we don't know each other's names before we tell people. But I think that it's very I'm very attuned to like, you know, how is this going to sort of sit with this person? Are they going to kind of like expand or are they going to contract? And I realized when I was coming out to sort of people in my family that I was the person that was contracting a lot before
Mm.
being like,
Wow.
because I didn't come out to anyone in my sort of extended family for like a year and a half. And I had done that because of how I thought they were going to respond. And then they didn't respond like that at all. Um, and I'm not advocating to come out for any trans people listening to this. Do not come out to your family if you don't feel like it's safe.
Yeah.
It was safe for me, and I feel very grateful for that. I learned a lot about myself by like kind of really watching how other people responded to me, and then not just
Mhm.
being like, "Oh, they're good or bad," but then being like, do I do that? Like, and the answer is
Mhm.
yes. I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think I once heard Alok, the who is a great thought leader on queerness, who said you don't have to understand someone to have compassion for them. And I think this idea of like, okay, even if you don't understand completely where someone's coming from, or it's new to you, you can still come first with compassion.
mhm,
And I think that that's kind of what I'm hearing here from your
totally.
family. Um, I wanna transition a little bit to talking about your I saw your eyebrows raised, that was funny. Um, I wanna transition a bit to talking about the name change process and the legality of that process, and especially in the moment we're in right now where the current administration is trying to regulate what kind of gender identities to put on IDs. What has that process been for both of you? It doesn't have we don't have to go into the depths of it, but how has that been for you and figuring out in which way to show up like on identity documents too?
Okay, where do I start? Um, yeah, I haven't changed my name. I was going to change my name considering the current administration. I just am worried about being on some sort of list, so, um, I didn't want to go through with that. I consider myself someone who's non-binary, and, like, when I think about my gender, in some ways I interact with myself as, like, a woman, in other ways I interact with myself as very much just, like, not a gendered being at all. With all that is to say, my name would be super feminine, and changing the gender marker on my ID, I feel like that was especially nerve-wracking. So if I changed my name to, like Madalena Sarah Joan, um, and had the M on there, like that would be an immediate out for me if I showed someone my ID. On the flip side, even if I changed the F, they could still look at me and be like, no. So right now, I still hold on to this kind of like safety of not my like transgenderism, not like being on the books in any sort of way. And if I want to, I can like, if I'm like in Alabama or something, I can like really cover my body and use my ID and like not really have to stress. Um, that being said, historically, name changes on our ID are very new. Not to say that they're not important, they're incredibly important. Um, but, like, we've always lived like this for a long time, and I'm prepared to live like this as long as I have access to my hormones, I have access to the people that I love, and I'm not, intensely discriminated against based on my gender. I'm fine.
Exactly. Thank you for sharing that. June, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the name changing my name has been very central in my transition. Like I was saying, kind of this grounding force. And so I have legally changed my name. Um, snaps. And I did it right before the current administration took
Mhm.
office. That being said, I don't have a name that um, cues non-trans people into me being trans. And this is something
Mm,
I didn't know when I chose the name June. I chose the name June because I was looking for a like feminine, um, a name that felt like it was grounded in femininity, but could kind of be like expanded into different directions. Um, and June, I was originally looking at Juniper, and I was like, that doesn't quite work. I joke that I'm like, Juniper's my royal name. Like, if you call me Juniper, you have to be like my liege, um, because it's just it's so long, it's
Yeah.
so majestic, but it's not me. It's very difficult because names hold so much meaning to
Yeah.
sort of be like, this name didn't really work for me. Um,
Mhm.
way that I like to describe it is that my um, original name felt kind of like a phantom limb. It's like there,
Mhm.
not what I used to pick up cups with, not what I used to, not what I used to kick a soccer ball, but it's there and
Yeah.
it's painful and it's sort of like is outside of me. It felt like people would say my
Mhm.
name and then it would be like, it's like I would look behind me and be like, who are you talking about? And that was like,
Yeah.
Mhm.
I remember, I can trace that feeling all the way back to my early childhood.
Oh,
And
wow.
so there was something that finding that continuity in my transness, I think, was really important, but also just a continuity mostly in my like embodied sense of feeling. And so then making that legal, I think, was really important for me. But sort of back to my original point, which is like people don't know. Trans people can usually tell that
Mhm.
that name is the chosen name, but usually people that I meet who aren't trans do not know. And so
Mhm.
that has been very interesting because it's put the onus on me a lot of the time to
Mhm.
like indicate to people that
Mhm.
I'm trans, like if I want to. And that has
Mhm.
been very, I think it's made me feel safer,
Mhm.
but honestly, it's been hard because it means that I have to assert because people don't look at
Mhm.
me. I have not transitioned using hormones, so people don't look at me and don't see my body as feminized or my face or my name. Um, so there is this. So I have to make that decision kind of in the
Yeah.
moment, but I do think it's nice to have like that piece of paper that's like, this is who you are. Um,
Yeah.
even though
Mhm.
it's not a necessity in the same way as a
Yeah.
lot of other things trans people need are.
Yeah.
No, that's fascinating to think about how transition happens in different ways and different manifestations of it and what at the end of the day it's what makes you feel like you're coming home to yourself
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
and and in whatever path you take on it. It's not like it's not just getting out of one stream and jumping in the other river.
Mm-mm.
I it continues to be a trip for me,
Mm.
like, because I know so many trans people, and none of us understand our gender, like, similarly, like, at all. Like, we
Mm.
have similar
Mhm.
experiences, and there's a lot of similarities, but, like, I cease to be amazed by the lack of overlap.
Mm.
Like, everyone is so different.
Yeah.
Um, it's really
And I think
beautiful.
it's because you're creating. You're creating something. You're letting
Yes.
your paintbrushes kind of go. It's like a paint by numbers versus like a free
Yes.
canvas.
And something I want to say, like, I think I thought a lot about like imagination in transness, and I think that imagination in like our culture is something that is like demoted to the realm of childhood or not taken seriously, being like, oh, that's your imagination, or like there's the real and there's the imaginary. And I think that as somebody who loves fiction writing, I'm like, the imagination sometimes holds much more truth than, I don't know, somebody's idea of who. I'm just thinking of Hamilton right now because I was listening to Hamilton, but like I'm thinking of that like book that Lin-Manuel Miranda used to write about Hamilton and how
Mhm.
that book was rife with this like this man's interpretation and lack of perspective on sort of people of color's experience in relation to Hamilton. Um, but being like, I think that um, I remember I was watching this video right when I was coming out that really frightened me. It was like this person like going around one of those stupid YouTube videos where this guy goes around being like telling people like he uses these pronouns. It's supposed to be very provocative, And then there was this person who got like so mad at this guy and was basically just yelling like, I don't believe in your imagination, like I don't believe in it. And I remember being like, damn, like
Mm.
what do you believe in?
Yeah.
Because there's like no way to conceive of your identity in this world unless you're able to believe in your
Mhm.
mind or
Yeah.
imagination. And so to not believe in somebody else's imagination is like feels like the ultimate way of hurting someone because it means you have no
Yeah.
compassion for them. Um,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and that I was like, oh no, like no
Mhm.
one's gonna believe in me. And then I was like, this is a YouTube video. I need to
Yeah.
delete YouTube. But I think
That's a good
that
solution.
I I think the imagination like is for me like it's boundless, similar to
Mhm.
gender, and so it's the only space I think that you can really conceive of. And when I say
Mhm.
imagination, I don't mean made up. I mean
Yeah.
literally felt things that you're trying to make sense of.
There's an expectation placed on, like, a shared common experience because people are trans and fall under that umbrella, when really that's also just kind of, like, made up in of itself, and, like, we're all just kind of figuring out how to find comfort in the world, and, like, I think in the same way, like, how much are you interacting with people, like, on the basis of preconceived notions of, like, their manhood or womanhood or, like, masculinity or femininity, and how much are you, like, um, interacting with them just based on who they are? And I think
Yeah.
being trans, I think one thing it does necessitate is, like, needing to carve your own, path in a certain way, because the one that's set out for you just um does not exist in the same way for you anymore.
Yeah,
Just
no, I
thought.
think that's beautiful, and the way that both of you have kind of melded this idea together of and I think at times it can be in because we've known gender through binaries, then all of a sudden there's this emphasis to when we're expanding these notions also create new boxes. And I think
Mm.
that that's what needs to continuously be broken. It's like weeding a garden where you're just like,
Yeah.
okay, there's new things creeping. Like you don't just like, you're not just done weeding the garden and then that's it. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, this is a continual process of figuring this out and growing new things and experimenting and changing. Um, Other episodes of my podcast, I've talked about the fact that there's this phenomena that in male-male friendships, people often interact side to side, whether it's like playing video games or playing sports or sitting at a bar. And female-female friendships and female-male friendships are more likely to be face to face, where you're going out to eat together or you're going out to have a coffee or other things like that. And so this like dichotomy of face to face versus side to side friendships in your both of your all's experiences, like, where do you see queer friendships?
Oh, the first thing that made me think of is this activity called contact improv, which basically involves you like having trust enough in somebody to like place your body and remain contact with them while you're moving around and like basically exploring space and exploring like that trust you have with that person. Um, but when I heard side to side and kind of front to front, I'm like, I feel like queer friendships are like they're like back to back, like head to head, arm to arm. This is actually the first time I'm hearing about this phenomenon, which is very, I think, very descriptive in a lot of ways. Because I think that in a lot of my side to side friendships that I've had with men, the side to side makes it so you don't have to like contend with silence and contend with vulnerability, and also like you're doing a stimulating thing that is always moving. You're always moving, and so there's no stopping to kind of like look at the other person. And I think that what I was really frustrated with growing up was like I felt kind of empty. Like there was this other thing, which I think like I needed more face to face. And so I feel like a lot of so I was somebody like in high school where I had a lot of sort of romantic relationships because I felt like I needed someone to see me because I was friends with boys basically. And then I started sort of becoming more friends sort of with girls after I started basically dating girls. And then I was like, wait, like this is way better. Like what the heck? Like I feel seen right now. Like this is amazing.
Yeah.
Mm.
Uh-huh.
And so but then also then of course being very confused about like why I couldn't have what is it called? Face-to-face
Face to
relationship,
face.
like women, and then have that like justly platonic. Like there's another
Yeah,
that's a whole
that's
nother
a whole nother
30
episode.
minutes. But I think,
Yes.
yeah, those are my thoughts.
I have like a few different thoughts. The first is like over the past year, I've been very obsessed with eye contact. I like look people like straight in the eyes.
You do.
And I don't just look like at them in the eyes, like I look at their eyes. And everyone's eyes are like so beautiful. I find it to be a way of like connecting with people. And when you're bringing up this idea of face to face, side to side, I'm like, that's literally a face to face friendship. Like I can't like that is how whenever I'm not able to do that, I feel like kind of disappointed in myself because that's how I hold myself to like connecting with people to my fullest ability is like looking them in the face, like looking them in the eyes. I'm friends with a lot of men. I'm friends with a lot of women. I'm friends with a lot of trans people, a lot of queer people, but they all interact with each other on a basis of like very, very much like respect and kindness and love and care. I feel like I'm really proud of the community that I found myself to be a part
Mm.
of. So I interact with people mostly on a face-to-face basis. And I guess like maybe I'm like contending with the sort of like social change of moving through side to side to face relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Because at a
Yeah.
certain point, I think both felt like possible for me, but I'm at the
Mm-hmm.
point in my life where like face to face is like pretty much most of what I got.
That's really interesting to hear that kind of progression too, because as someone who has always identified and walked through this world in the body of a girl and a woman, like the face to face has always been like what has been natural to me. So watching men do side to side relationships has always been so like peculiar to me. So seeing like
Mm.
your transition of being like, oh wow, like face to face is like what's bearable right now kind of thing is so interesting to hear. I guess I want to close this off with I've learned so much, but um rephrasing my last question that I usually do on every podcast, which is usually is what do you love about being a man? But I'm curious for both of you, like what is one thing that you love or loved about boyhood and manhood or experiencing boyhood and manhood?
So I started off college in quote unquote all male a cappella group. Um, and I remember going into that space as a man and experiencing manhood and being very overwhelmed by, in a good way, sort of the physical affection and sort of words of care that these men were kind of expressing to me and kind of showing me that I could do. They were very expressive, maybe that's a cappella a little bit for you. What I loved was how that space was able to hold, this important part of me. I think that space was not able to hold a lot of me, and I had to
Yeah.
leave that space, I think, like towards sort of when I was sort of transitioning. But I did really love that feeling of like
Hmm.
love and camaraderie and kind of like
Like a brotherhood kind of?
brotherhood. Yeah, brotherhood. And
Mm,
I think that what is a shame about brotherhood is that it's only for brothers. Like, I think everyone should
yeah.
have brotherhood. And I think that that space was beautiful and I loved that. But it was also a space that couldn't hold uh, somebody who wanted to be more feminine. And I think that that to
Mm,
me showed the limits of brotherhood. But
hmm.
that doesn't mean it wasn't something that I loved because I did
Yeah.
and I do. And so when I do interact with those people who are in that group, I'm still very close with them. And I feel that kind of, that brotherhood. I'm, I do love it. I just think making brotherhood more expansive would be cool. But I think
Mm,
it's very challenging
it's a tall
to do
order.
that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating.
I love the brotherhood thing. I think long after for a little while after I, like, came out as non-binary, I still kind of felt like the desire to, like, hold on to because I grew up with a brother and we were very close, um, to that brotherhood sort of relationship, and I think I still do. Um,
Mhm.
I also wonder how much like Brotherhood for Everyone looks just like a really healthy community.
Word.
And like,
Yeah.
and that like a lot of times we're taught as both men and women that we have community like based on our shared experience as men or women, at least in certain spaces. I think
Yeah.
like race and class can kind of interact with that in a very important way, but there's like a basis of like, oh, we're in this together sort ofness that like creates a sort of brotherhood
Mhm.
ability. And I think, you know, dispelling a lot of these understandings of who we are based on manhood, womanhood, and like just interacting with one another as people would help a lot with that.
Can evolve through healthy expressions of masculinity too, is just
Yeah.
so grounding to end on. And I'm just grateful for both of you for your vulnerability, for your stories, for your experiences, and for your imagination and creativity that you bring to this world. And so I'm just grateful and excited for more conversations that dive deeper into this.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for creating
Yeah.
this space
Yeah.
and
Thank you
holding
so
it so
much.
beautifully.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Masking Tapes. I am so grateful for June and Madeline for their vulnerability, honesty, storytelling, and wisdom, bringing into this conversation the experiences of queer and trans folks. So make sure to follow the Masking Tapes on Instagram at maskingtapes.pod and leave any feedback, comments, questions. I'm just so grateful for your support.